Reformation Day celebrates failed reform. If somebody said they wanted to reform the government, you would not assume that they mean they wanted to secede from the Union, presumably. You would think they wanted to fix the existing powers that be in the state of affairs and status quo. And so if you think about it in that light, church reform should be about reforming the church, not breaking away from the church. And so there are plenty of church reformers in the history of the church. Think about people like St. Francis. St. Francis has a vision by God where he's told, rebuild my church. He originally takes that to mean literally, the church there in Assisi, and he rebuilds it. But it turns out he's being called to create this whole wave of renewal within the church in the 12th century, and he does. That's a reform. You go from bad Catholics to good Catholics. But what Luther's trying to do is you go from bad Catholics or good Catholics to good Lutherans. That's no longer a reform, that's a revolution. And so here I think it matters. Like the issue in other contexts is people weren't living out their Catholic faith. They weren't doing what the church told them they should be doing, and that includes plenty of churchmen. That includes even popes. They weren't living according to the gospel. They weren't living according to Catholic teaching. And so the solution there was do things that are more in keeping with Catholic teaching. But for Luther, the problem is instead, and for all the reformers after him who have different ideas of this, is that what the things the church is calling you to do, they're not even the right things to do in the first place. And so the church teaching needs to change, not just the holiness or the practice of members. That's an important difference in how we conceptualize things. If you take the existing teachings of the church and say, we reject these teachings, we're going to form a different denomination, that's not really a reform. Now, you could always say, well, the church could have changed all of her teachings. All the people saying that, they're not going to get what they're asking for there. So I would say this, there have been plenty of church reforms. There were even church reforms in response to the Reformation. Think about like the Council of Trent. It forbids, for instance, the sale of indulgences. A lot of things that the reformers were justifiably grieved by are addressed. So this strikes me as, I think, an area where maybe there's some agreement and some disagreement. Because a lot of Protestants celebrate Reformation Day, not because they love schism or anything like that, but because they saw that there were real problems in the church, and they're really happy that people stood up to the church and faced those problems. And the reality is there were real problems in the church, but breaking away from the church wasn't the right answer. Just like you might have real problems in your marriage, but divorce isn't the right answer. That's a basic kind of principle. This is why we're against schism, even when it's inconvenience. I know I say this all the time, but I have to say it today. In John 17, when Jesus prays for his future disciples that we will all be one, he prays that knowing all of the excuses we're going to have to not be one. He prays that knowing all of the church conflicts and crises and everything else that might justify you wanting to leave, wanting to break away. And still, he prays that we'll all be one.